Hello, everybody. Welcome to 11th Foundation Roundtable. Right now, it's currently just me. Here in about 15, 20 minutes, candidate Don Brown will be joining me for an interview. I'm expecting Michael Vasquez to join as well. He should be showing up here shortly as well. He has some personal items that he needs to take care of. So right now, you got to deal with me. I know it's been a while since I've been on, and there hasn't been a whole lot going on with me, other than I've been putting in a lot of hours. It's been very hard for me to be able to get on here and actually be here on Wednesday nights. I've been rather late, so it's been quite a challenge. So the gentleman that will be joining us later is Don Brown. If any of you don't know who he is an author. He has written several books, a couple of which are Travesty of Justice, which resulted in a military member of the military that was convicted of murder being pardoned by President Trump. He's Lieutenant Clint Lawrence, who was convicted by military court-martial of murder because of some incidents during a firefight in Afghanistan in 2011. Don wrote this book, Travesty of Justice, and that actually helped win a presidential pardon from President Trump for Lieutenant Lawrence on November 15th, 2019. He has appeared on Hannity, Fox News, and several others. He is also running for the United States Senate for the state of North Carolina. So tonight we should get a lot of new information. Mr. Don is also a constitutional scholar, so to speak. He's a constitutional expert, and he is also a lawyer. He's argued cases in front of the Supreme Court, and also doing legal defense work and other legal items as well. Give me just a second, folks. Sorry about that, folks. So yeah, I'm looking forward to talking with Mr. Brown and seeing where he stands on a lot of positions, and also talking about some of the constitutional issues that we're facing as a country, and talk about some of the things that we've looked at from a legal standpoint, some of the cases that are currently working their way through the courts and so forth, and get his take on how those may or may not play out. So it could be a rather interesting night. I'm sure that we will have rather interesting discussion. So folks, do you guys have anything to say? I'm looking forward to hearing from you guys too. And don't be afraid to join us in the chat and let us know from you what questions you guys might have, what things that you guys might want us to discuss and take a closer look at. So with that, we're just waiting, like I said, wait for Don to show up. We're also waiting for Michael Vasquez to show up. And Frank may be on later, or he may not. Depends on how things go with him. he unfortunately has to work tonight. And so that's essentially where we're at. I guess I know it's been quite a while since I've been on here doing this, so I apologize for that, folks. And honestly, I've been slammed with work. Life goes on, and unfortunately, I've had to kind of work on that instead of being here. Um, so I apologize, and hopefully I can start making more time to be here. But that all depends on how things work out. Because right now, the Democrats are trying to play this off as if we are in a that our country is in an economic crisis, when the opposite is true. Most places that are looking for employees cannot find candidates. They cannot find people aren't even applying for jobs. So that's telling me that our unemployment rate is not as high as they're trying to make it out to be. There are a lot of great jobs out there right now, and there's industries all across this country that are desperately seeking individuals to work. My industry is one of them. There's the IT industry. There's countless other industries. Hospitality industry is looking for people as well. Retail industry is looking for people. Pretty much, you look at any industry right now, you're finding out that they are all looking for people. They are not. We're not losing jobs. If anything, jobs are being created, and it's looking like we don't have enough people to fill them. Now, some of you are going to say, well, that's why we need to allow immigrants to come into this country. And I'm all fine with that, provided they go through the processes that they need to go through. Just coming into our country without going through the proper vetting and so forth, I don't agree with that. Okay, and you'll find that most other countries across this world have the same position. And they have very stringent requirements that you must meet in order to be able to come to their country and stay in their country as a potential new citizen or as an immigrant to their country. The United States used to be that way, and we need to get back to that. Okay, we have the best country in the world. We have a country that's full of freedom, and people desire to come here, but they need to come here in the right way. We need to be able to actually have them join our society in a manner which we can accommodate. Okay, if we don't have jobs for them, then we can't support them. If we don't have the resources to be able to handle them coming into our country, then we need to put some limits on it. Okay, and those are things that a lot of people on the conservative side and a lot of people that are pro-immigrant but anti-illegal immigrant are saying. Okay, they say we don't have a problem with accepting immigrants. The problem that we have is when they come here illegally and they don't follow the law, because right then they are automatically criminal. And they're trying to make it out as if what ICE is doing is unconstitutional and illegal and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But ICE is doing their job. They're doing the job that should have been done during the last administration. If it would have been done during the last administration, we would not be seeing the repercussions that we're seeing today. Those are the things we need to look at when we're looking to pass judgment on this administration. Is what was the shape of this country when he took over? And honestly, this country was not in good shape. We had record high inflation, which inflation is still a problem, and the biggest reason why that inflation is a problem is because we've got a Congress that is spending like crazy, and it's spending out of control, and they want to spend even more money and advocate for a lot of these programs that they have no authority to even be involved with, but yet they want to spend money on them. And we need to start holding our government accountable. And I don't care if you're on the left or if you're on the right. When we start moving away from the Constitution and the constitutional premise that our country was founded upon, then we start having issues. And you can say, hey, well, the Constitution's out of date. No, the Constitution isn't out of date. Okay? If we wanted to change, there is a proper procedure for changing it. And regardless of whether you're on the left or if you're on the right, the Constitution is the same for both of us. Now, the Democrats trying to cry that this administration is violating the Constitution in a lot of different ways. We can discuss some of those as we go through tonight. The thing is regardless of which side of the aisle you're on, whether you're on the left, whether you're on the right, whether you're constitutionalist, or whether you're conservative or liberal, the Constitution should be forefront in your looking at how we are being governed. Because when we start allowing the Constitution to be violated, it gives permission for not just your side to violate the Constitution, but for the other side to violate the Constitution. And that's where we have to start holding the people accountable, regardless of what side of the aisle they're on. Even if you vote for that person, if they are in the process of ignoring the Constitution, then we need to say something, regardless of who it is. And that's where we need to start looking inward, looking at ourselves, and looking in the mirror as to what is going on. Okay, folks, it shouldn't be too much longer, and Don should be joining us. He said he's running about 15 minutes late. I'm actually looking forward to talking to him. We tried to do this last week, but I had some severe technical difficulties and could not get anything to launch. Some of you that follow me on Facebook or follow Liberty First Foundation on Facebook might have seen some very brief lives. Start up, stop, start up, stop, start up, stop. That was the problem that was happening. I was not able to get my feet to actually go like it should. We seem to have gotten that straightened out, got that figured out. So here we are tonight. So what all do you want to know? What all you guys, do you have any questions? I see there's a few people in the room. I'm looking forward to a lot more joining us. And we're really kind of happy that we do have John that'll be joining us here in a little bit. And folks, we had an election yesterday, and America made its voices heard. Okay, whether we agree with them or not, the thing is people voted, and when they voted, they made their voices heard. And whether that was to elect a new mayor in New York City, or a new governor in Virginia, or whatever, that is what those people decided. We need to be accepting of that. Okay, this not accepting these elections because you don't agree with who was elected, that's where we're going to start having issues in this country. That's where we are starting to have some issues. I see Michael is in the green room. Let him get settled in a little bit, and then we'll get him on here. And then Don should be joining us here shortly as well. Okay. So let's give them a couple more minutes, couple seconds left, and you should be ready. Okay. Hey, Michael. How you doing? Can you hear me? Oh, I can't hear you. Stand by. I get my speakers going. I goofed up. I forgot my sound systems. Got it messing up on me. There we go. Can you hear me, Michael? Okay. Let me see if I've got sound here. Stand by, folks. So I do have sound. I'm not hearing you, Michael. I'm not hearing you, Michael. So it looks like Michael's having a little bit of sound issues. At first, I thought it was me because I forgot to change my speakers around, but those are back. And just tested them. They're fine. So I'm not quite sure what's going on. Hopefully, we'll be able to get his sound straightened out here shortly. So other than that, we've been having quite a few things going on. We've got a government that's been shut down for 34 days. There's been 14 votes taken to try to reopen our government under the same spending that was in place. And the Democrats keep voting against that, trying to force through an extension on the enhanced credits for the Affordable Care Act. There's a lot of misinformation going on about the Care Act and what is getting ready to transpire. Democrats would have you believe that the premiums of the Affordable Care Act are going up, and they are going up. Okay, which insurance premiums go up all the time. That's part of the process. What they aren't telling you is what they're trying to scare you with is these big premiums that people are going to have to pay if the enhanced tax credits expire. That's what's happening. Is these premiums have been there. It's just taxpayers have been paying for them. Okay. It's not like they aren't there.
1, 2, 3.
There we go. Now you're there, Mike.
It didn't recognize my microphone until I unplugged it. Okay.
That figures.
Don't know why I did that.
So it's been a while.
Yeah, I haven't seen you for a bit.
Yeah, I know. Things have just been going crazy. And I touched on it here a little bit earlier before you came on that I don't care what industry you're in, there is a shortage of employees right now. Pretty much every place I know of is looking for employees. Yeah, we've heard of some big layoffs coming on.
Yeah, massive. Amazon had 14,000. UPS is having 48,000. Based on several people working with AI, they're expecting that within the next 5 years, we'll have a 50% drop in the employment rate.
But I know in the retail industry right now, okay, that pretty much every retail shop that I know of is looking for people. Okay, they can't find people to come to work. In my industry, in the electronics industry, every
shop that I know of is looking for people.
Well, here's the thing about that. There's it's one, the quality of people and the type of people. So
Mm-hmm.
let's clarify that. If we're talking about Gen Z, about 50% of them can't hold a job for the first year. And so that's adding to the numbers. And that's just, we've seen several studies on that. It's very consistent. They don't, they're not ready to work, about 50% of Gen Z. So they're rotating through a lot of jobs. They'll get hired in retail and then they'll get fired
Mm-hmm.
in retail because they believe they're entitled to have management positions and they don't know anything.
Right.
So that's one of the problems that you're seeing. You're also seeing the transition by many businesses into various aspects of AI, and the industry is still trying to figure that out. What, how much is too much, how much is not enough. So we're seeing that come into the workplace as well, as a lot of jobs are being eliminated, and that happens. So we're seeing that happen at the same time. And we also have a lag factor that there were 1.5 million more people unemployed under the Biden administration in 2023 and 2024 that was not disclosed until June of 2025.
Mm-hmm.
So there is a problem with unemployment in that it's higher than we were led to believe because of Biden. But if we look at it empirically over time, 4%, 4.3% unemployment is historically great.
Oh
That's a
yeah.
very good level for our country, which is why you see so many people, so many more jobs than people to fill them. But part of that deficit is because we have unqualified people as well.
Mm-hmm. Well, part of that is unqualified people. Another part of it is that we are starting to see the impacts from the large number of people that are being deported. Okay, and that's also adding to the strain of too
That's
many
part of it.
jobs, not enough people.
That's a part, but we haven't hit huge numbers on deportations yet. We still haven't gotten to a million. I believe we're somewhere around 500,600,000, which
Mm-hmm.
is a decent amount. I mean, in any one year, normally the number is about 150 to 200,000 at the maximum. Right now, we're looking at about 600,000. So it's larger than a normal year for the most part. But uh, those are, and again, those are what they call unskilled labor, although that does include carpentry, electricians, plumbers, um, which I believe are skilled laborers,
Yeah.
and we desperately need. So that's
Mm-hmm.
part of it as well. But at this moment, everyone wants to blame it on the tariffs. It's way too early to do that. The tariffs, many of them have been very effective. Some of them have a lagging effect. We've had a couple of them turn on and off, like with China, for various aspects. We can't count that. We don't. It's going to take another 9 months to a year to see the impact of those tariffs. Realistically, we are in a transition period from Bidenomics into the Trump economic system. And in that transition, there has been a recession, which started before Trump came in
Mm-hmm.
and is continued. It was delayed because the Fed didn't cut rates immediately, as they should have back in April. And so we have a lagging effect. We don't know what the economy is really going to look like. We're too early into this, and the Democrats want to say Orange Man bad. So they instantly assume that the world is falling apart.
Well,
That's
if,
not
if
accurate.
we look at Trump's first term, it was well into his second year before the economy really started gathering speed. Okay, and it wasn't until the last half of his administration under his first term that we really saw the economy really turning around.
Yeah,
That's when
we're
we
not going
saw
to
the
see that.
lowest gas prices. That's when we saw the lowest employment numbers,
We're
et
not going to see
cetera,
it.
et cetera, et cetera.
We're
What's
not
that?
going to see that this time. we're in a very different world.
Oh, we are in a different world, but what I'm trying to point out is it took time.
Yeah, yeah, which it does for every president. Again, the first year of any president, uh, a new president stepping in for an older president, there's always that transition. There's always some instability to a certain extent. The fact that Trump has tried to do so many changes, which is, I think, beneficial. We need these changes, but he had to do them very quickly because he's a lame duck president.
Mm-hmm.
By the time he gets, depending on how the 2026 midterms turn out, he may not have political power, but this time next year, he'll be lame duck and he has no more power. So he had to get everything done within the first 6 months as much as possible. That's when we started seeing Democrats slow down all of the changes he was doing and put in the bureaucracy, held things up. And now we're in what is more of a uh, normal business environment for most presidents. Most presidents are at this pace that Trump's doing right now throughout their entire presidency. It's only because
Mm-hmm.
Trump was so hyper active and hyper vigilant in the first 6 months that we look at today and say, oh, something's slowing down. But that's not accurate. I do, at some point, we want to talk about what happened in New York, Virginia,
Yeah.
Jersey, over in Minneapolis, because that has a lot to do with what we're going to see going forward. Hello, Mr. Brown.
Well, hello, everybody.
Hello, welcome to the show. We actually got to work into this week.
Hey, if at first you try and don't succeed, my grandmama used to say, so here we are.
Okay. When I started up the stream tonight, I kind of gave them a little bit of your background, but please, sir, give us some of your background and kind of let us know more about you.
Well, all right. I grew up in eastern North Carolina, down near the Outer Banks. Went off to school, became a U.S. Navy JAG officer, and served 5 active and another 11 in the reserves. Got out, started writing books, and got involved in some pretty heavy duty litigation matters, and done some constitutional law while I was just a few years into my practice as an ex-JAG officer. I got very active in rules of engagement issues with regard to our troops in Afghanistan and Iraq, especially after the bin Laden raid in 2011. Right. The rules of engagement shifted basically to make our soldiers, sailors, airmen, Marine targets. The Obama administration valued the lives of the Taliban more than Americans. And I worked pretty closely with our now Secretary of War, Pete Hegseth, on a couple of cases that got some national attention, one involving an 82nd Airborne paratrooper named Lieutenant Clint Lawrence, who had been prosecuted for quote-unquote murder, based upon a firefight that his platoon got in Afghanistan. They railroaded the kid. Pete and I worked very, very hard on that case. Got a lot of national attention. President Trump pardoned Clint. Prior to that, I had been involved in investigating and writing a book on the shoot down of an American Chinook helicopter in Afghanistan, call sign Extortion 17 in 2011. And that was a horrible situation where we lost 30 Americans, including 17 members of SEAL Team 6 or United States Navy.
Right.
Division.
Yeah, I remember when that happened.
Yep. So I wrote that book. They did a movie on that, which is distributed by Salem Communications. So I got involved in that and got involved in working with the House Armed Services Committee to lead an investigation of that shoot down. So it became as a vet, and we're coming up on Veterans Day here just in a few days, was very active in trying to protect our servicemen and women using some of the skills that I acquired as a JAG officer, and got involved in some high-profile cases. After that, got involved in some J6 litigation, defending and giving legal advice to several of our J6 patriots, who all they did was basically walk into the Capitol, walk out, and wound up, being charged mercilessly. The whole J6 prosecutorial scheme was an assault on the Constitution, and they represented the youngest J6er, Elliot Bechet, who we think he's the youngest at 20 years old, and have given advice to some others as well. After that, got involved in the medical freedom movement when the Biden administration was pushing the jab down everybody's throats, threatening to,
Right.
and so got involved in some major federal litigation there and attacked the constitutionality and and some other legal theories we used. And so, uh, afterwards went out running for Congress once, and now here we are running for the United States Senate in North Carolina. So we've been involved in some frontline issues that have been crucial to our nation in the last 10 years or so, and hoping to keep the battle alive as we enter this race for the U.S. Senate, continue to crisscross the state of North Carolina, 65 out of 100 counties so far. So we're pushing hard.
Okay. Yeah, I used to live in North Carolina. I was actually stationed in New River.
Yeah.
And then I lived in Havelock for about 3 years.
Yeah. Well, that's a beautiful section of the country. I grew up in the eastern part of the state, was in New Hanover County just yesterday. I've been in Craven County, saw a couple of ospreys in the air and had to explain to somebody what that strange looking bird was up there. But Marines are very important to the state of North Carolina, with Camp Lejeune being here, with New River being here. And of course, Fort Bragg is here in North Carolina. We're probably in some ways, the most military friendly state in the Union in some ways. Virginia's got the big Navy bases, but for the Army and the Marine Corps and Seymour Johnson Air Force Base being here, North Carolina is a military state. And so I've got the military at the top of my mind, and our vets at the top of my mind. I'm going to do everything I can to make sure our vets get treated right.
Don, if I may, I can call you Don, yes?
Oh, I hope so. My daddy was Mr. Brown. I'm just Dom, my man. So you call me anything you like. It's great.
Okay. Don, so I noticed you previously had run in the 2024 Congressional District 8, North Carolina 8th District. And so that was actually your first foray into running for Congress.
Correct.
Obviously, you didn't win that. Fair enough. First time candidate, happens to a lot of people. But I have to wonder, so you went from Congress and now you're seeking the Senate. And that's kind of an upgrade. And I'm wondering, what made you make that decision to go from a House seat, House of Representatives, to the Senate?
That was never in the plan to upgrade, as you say, although I believe that our local elections are just as important as the national elections, and we can't let the Democrats run hog wild and city council and school board races, etc. But I won't get sidetracked. To answer your question, we did run in 24. Was urged to do that. Jumped in that race very late. As a matter of fact, jumped in the Wednesday before Thanksgiving, a week before Thanksgiving, with a March 3rd primary. So it jumped in late. You can't do too much over the holiday, so we were really running with a very short runway in front of us. Did fairly well. If we jumped in earlier, I'm not going to say that we would have won, but I think we could have been we could have, come pretty close. I'm very delighted that Mark Harris was elected in the 8th District. But to answer your question, running for the Senate was never on my radar. But ironically, I had a lot of my opponent's supporters in the 8th District who were encouraging me to run. I'm talking about my opponent's supporters, not just my supporters. And I kind of blew them off. And at the time, Senator Tillis was making a lot of noise against the president's agenda, and he continues to do that. And, we needed a conservative response to Senator Tillis. North Carolina is the home of the great Jesse Helms, who years ago was a giant in the Senate, and we haven't had anybody like him since then. But the straw that broke the camel's back was, really, as I mentioned earlier, I've done some work with Pete Hegseth. The guy is the real deal. I mean, I can tell you, I think he's going to be our greatest Secretary of Defense, now Secretary of War in history. He is a soldier secretary. But when Tillis went after Pete, President wanted Pete as Secretary of Defense, now Secretary of War. And Tillis had said that he would basically support any of the president's cabinet nominees who came out of committee. And Pete came out of the Senate Armed Services Committee with flying colors. And then Tillis still tried to torpedo that nomination. And to me, that was the straw that broke the camel's back. So we jumped in the race. At the time, there was one other Republican, Andy Nelson, who I have gotten to be friends with on the campaign trail. Andy has now left the race. But we needed a conservative constitutional alternative to Tillis. Tillis was going to lose. And, it's like President Reagan once said, if not us, then who? And if not now, then when? And it kind of fell into place through a combination of circumstances not having been planned. And I joke around wherever I go, look for a psychiatric referral, just kind of joking around when I go, you got to be half crazy to want to do this. But I do it for love of state and for love of country. And our country is in trouble with this exploding national debt that the Republican Party still hasn't come up with a cogent plan to attack. And I hope to do that. And so that's the reason we're here, and we'll see how it goes.
Okay. So if I understood that correctly, the answer was you don't like Senator Tillis, you like Pete Hegseth, and people in the North Carolina 8th District asked you to run. So those were the three factors.
I think that's kind of, let me say, it's not that I don't like Senator Tillis personally. I don't like his.
I'm not talking about personal. I'm talking professional. We're talking about their work.
That's right. And Hedges is a friend, and I was being encouraged by folks in the 8th to run, including a lot of my opponents' supporters from the congressional race, which I was complimented by that. And so, yes, I think it's fair to say those were sort of like the flash points that kind of led us to where we are now.
Okay. Because in looking over that race, the primary, and the results there, looking at the FEC funding, you brought in about $82,000. And normally a Senate race, and I understand you mentioned you jumped into the North Carolina 8th rate late. Okay, fair enough. I've run for Congress myself. I understand it's difficult. It's hard to raise money. No problem. But now you're early on 2026. You jumped in. Normally, a race of this magnitude would cost about $2 million to $5 million. Do you believe you can raise that?
Yes.
But you only raised $81,000 for your congressional race.
Yes. Well, remember, let me back up again. The congressional race, we entered it the Wednesday before Thanksgiving, and so it's hard enough to run in a Senate race or a congressional race. But, when you enter it during the holidays, it makes it even more challenging. So you don't have enough runway to get involved with. So we did not wait until the last second here. We entered the race in February. And so we've got a much, much stronger organization than we had in the congressional run. We have county captains all over the state, and we've got thousands of supporters. And so we are trying to give ourselves an opportunity to win this at the grassroots level, and I believe we're going to do it.
Okay. I'm only trying to understand. I don't mean, I hope it doesn't come across as if I'm attacking. I'm trying to understand the nature of the race and your position in that race so others can also understand it as well. So I'm just trying to understand those discrepancies because they aren't clear to me. But I did also look over at your website, and it's a very interesting website. Now, by the way, let me stop. Reintroduce myself. I love politics, and I just jump right in. I apologize. I don't know if you've been introduced. I'm Michael Voss with No Sound Bites Allowed. I have been covering politics for over 20 years, in particular national, international politics, congressional races across the country.
Right.
So these are questions I would ask and have asked everyone from national vice presidential candidates all the way down to local candidates. So I don't want it to seem like I'm being mean in any way. I'm just trying to understand.
Michael, you ask anything you like. I've got a thick skin, man, so go for it.
Well, you have to.
Right,
exactly. The position you're going for.
And no question is a bad question. Every question is fair. And if I don't think it's fair, we'll have a discussion on that too. So fire away, brother. I'm very much aware of your reputation. Appreciate your good work.
Well, I have a good reputation. Well, most people like me.
Sure, of course we do.
So I was looking at some of the proposals that you have, and people can check this out at Don Brown for NC. Don Brown for NC. Sorry, my eyes are weak, and it's
Yep.
on my other screen. And they can go on there and they can just click on your policies page. I do recommend people to check that out. No matter what um, what happens, you always go to the source, and source is whenever possible. So I'm looking over your policies, and many of them are very much MAGA, America First policies. That's true. But at the same time, they rub against some of the establishment GOP, as well as, of course, all the Democrats. So I'm wondering, we'll take one as an example, constitutional protection for the unborn. Let me ask you, how do you think you're going to get that passed?
Well, um, the policies that I'm putting on this page, the policies including that, my position on life is I believe that the unborn have constitutional protection. And I
Mhm.
think my point is it's not a matter of getting that passed, it's a matter of communicating consistency in the law. Because if you look, and you know, I've practiced a little law on my own, and I'm familiar with the way the unborn are treated in different areas of the law. So, for example, in the law of intestate succession, under which, you know, if a baby is conceived on Monday, the father is killed on Tuesday, that baby comes to you know, to be born 9 months later, that baby has a right under the law of intestate succession to inherit. So in other words, the right of inheritance goes to the date of conception under the law of
Mhm.
intestate succession. The same is true under the law of personal injury. You know, if a baby is hurt in his or her mother's womb during a car wreck,
Mhm.
or even killed, there's a right, you know, to recover monetarily. That has not been the case when we talk about protecting the unborn in the world of this abortion stuff. And what I'm saying is we've got to rethink how we look at constitutional protection for babies. And I think once that happens, everything else will largely take care of itself. So it's not like I'm putting a specific proposal out there. I'm letting you know that my view of life is that life begins at conception, and we have an inconsistency in the way the law is applied, and we need to make sure the law is applied that way. That life begins at conception in every area of the law, including protecting the lives of the unborn.
No, I agree with you, and I'm a proponent I'm pro-life,
Yeah.
so I have no problem with that. Which is why I was wondering: is there a bill that you are looking to either sponsor or co-sponsor that you can mention to us that encapsulates the protection for the unborn and how you plan to approach in particular, the Democrats are the biggest
All right.
hurdle,
Right.
although there are some members of the GOP as well. But
Right.
I just wanted to hear how you were going to approach it, as others have tried to approach it. Nothing's made it through yet.
Well, after Dobbs, at least theoretically, the question returned to the states. The problem is that
Yes.
after Dobbs, we haven't seen a reduction in the number of abortions, and that needs to happen. And I think it has to happen. To answer your question, uh, when I was running for Congress in 2024, there was a one of the questions that was asked in a debate with all. We had 6 candidates, I believe, had to do with
Mhm.
theoretically a heartbeat bill, and I said yes, I would support a heartbeat bill if it came to the floor. And one of my opponents sort of, you know, talking in circles would not do that. Not saying that I'm going to write it necessarily and bring it to the floor, but I certainly would support measures to protect the unborn at a federal level. But above and beyond that, and let me just say also, Democrats, you know, uh, even after the Dobbs decision, Biden and the former Secretary of Defense were still trying to force federal funds into abortions within the military, which is a violation of the Hyde Amendment, as you know, Michael, because
Mhm.
you're a student of all this,
Yeah.
and so you've got to get all federal funding out of it. So I'm going to push to get all federal funding out of it, but we've got to educate folks um, on when life begins, and we got to try to push that education as much as possible. You got to be compassionate with women who get pregnant, and
Mhm.
maybe the pregnancy isn't planned. You gotta love them and be compassionate, but I think what I'm saying is I believe that life begins at conception, and I'm prepared to support legislation to protect life um, at every level. Now I don't have a specific bill that I can cite to you right now, but I'm favorable to all types of federal protection for life. You know, if you look at the Constitution of the United States, the Fifth Amendment provides, and as applied to the state through the 14th Amendments, that no state can deprive a person of life, liberty, or property without due process of law. And when we understand that an unborn baby is alive, you just can't take the life of the unborn baby without due process. So I favor due process. You just can't. I mean, when you abort a baby without any due process, you violated the 14th Amendment that the states have, and the federal government has violated the Fifth Amendment, because those babies are entitled to due process. And I think we got to find a way to ensure that folks understand that those babies have a right to due process, just like a baby who's been born. The former governor of Virginia, Ralph Northam, who infamously said, the baby is born and the baby is set aside and the mother and the doctor will have a discussion. That's about as nefarious as it gets. And unfortunately, the Democrats have taken control of the Virginia governor's mansion again, but that's pretty nefarious. Those babies have a right to due process. And so that's what I mean when I'm talking about constitutional protection for children, and specifically for unborn children.
No, I understand. I understand your approach, which is very similar to the heartbeat bills that we've seen in Texas and Mississippi, a few other states.
Sure.
So I do understand it, and I understand the ideology behind it. So I do appreciate that. So again, I was just trying to understand how you were looking to move this forward in the Senate and to present it to Democrats, and if there was an actual bill attached to that. That's fine.
Yeah, and the first thing is to ensure that all federal funding everywhere is gone for abortions, every bit of it. And you can't have any exceptions for the military, for anybody else, because the Hyde Amendment prohibits that, in my judgment. But the Fifth Amendment also prohibits it, because it's a violation of due process, of taking a kid's life without due process. So that's what I can do from the federal level to try to block all funding for abortions, period. And I want to support our states. The state of North Carolina, I think, needs to go farther in protecting kids, but that's a state question. But I will use my position, having a bully pulpit, to continue to argue and advocate for life and to protect life anywhere and everywhere we can. I think it's a scourge on our country that we have sacrificed so many babies since Roe versus Wade. So,
Don, can you tell me what are your top 3 issues?
Yeah.
And what bill would you propose on those 3 issues?
Right. Thank you. Well, there are some of those issues and some bills, and I'll say first off, just last week or the week before, the national debt crested $38 trillion, and when I jumped into the race, it was 36 trillion something, then to 37 trillion, and then now 38 trillion. And President Trump and this administration have done a masterful job starting out with the slew of executive orders that have helped to protect freedom. But nonetheless, what's happening at this point is our Republicans have brought down the rate of spending to about. Let me rephrase. The other day, I was headed up to Asheville for an event in the mountains. I'm living in the Charlotte area, a couple hours up there, and there's a website called usdebtclock.org. I'm sure you guys are aware of it.
Yeah, that has currently at 38.1 trillion.
Yeah. So, I pulled out this little cell phone I've got, and just for the heck of it, I was watching the debt clock and set it for a minute, let it run. The alarm goes off. The debt had increased $2 million in 1 minute, and it's about $37,000 a second. $2 million a minute comes out about $2.8 billion a day. Now, that's down from about $55,000 a second under the Democrats, $60,000 and $55,000, down to about $37,000 a second. That the debt is exploding still. So, we Republicans say we brought the level of spending down, but that's not enough. The national debt, in my opinion, gentlemen, is a latent, bomb. It is a hidden bomb that we are not looking at, and we get worked up about a lot of things, and we should be worked up about DEI. We should be offended that the wokeness of the Democrats have rammed down people's throats trying to put little, men in little girls' bathrooms and make girls compete against men and whatever it might be in the alphabet soup, whatever they're doing, all this stuff is crazy and offensive. But the danger that we have if we don't arrest the national debt is that we're going to lose the United States dollar. So this is issue number one. We Republicans have got to have a serious plan of attack, not just to slow the debt, but to reverse it.
Okay, what's your plan?
My plan is what I call a Deep State Reduction Act, and it would do two things. First off, it would reduce by 2/3 all non-military federal personnel over a 10-year period, which could be in some ways easily accomplished because you're retiring many of them out. Then you take the savings and apply that to the national debt. Then, and this is going to be painful, it's going to cause a lot of whining, but I want to see at least 2/3 of all federal agencies eliminated. And that money needs to go to attack the national debt as well. If you can't defend an agency clearly by the United States Constitution, it's got to go. And
Okay.
Congress has got to have the guts to do it.
What agency must go?
Well, first off, the Department of Education's got to go. It's got to go.
And another one. Trump's already been trying to do that. That's
Yeah.
been number one. What's
I want to come to the second one just in a second, but let me elaborate on that a second. We've got a Republican Congress. Why do we still have a Department of Education? Okay, yeah, you might say maybe it's the filibuster with the Democrats, but do we even our Republicans have got to be stronger in taking these agencies out. The Internal Revenue Service needs to go. Okay, and we got to look at the way we do taxes. Got to go. Got to trash heap of history. FEMA, I think, has been a disaster, and I don't have a litany of all the agencies I would like to see eliminated tonight.
That's fine.
If you want me to come back on, I'll come up with a list. But FEMA has been a disaster here in North Carolina. A disaster with Katrina down in New Orleans. It's been a disaster with our 25 mountain counties who endured this Hurricane Helene just last year. We multiple reports of FEMA come in and try to block, supplies to go to folks. It's been a disaster. That's got to go. PBS has to go. The National Endowment of the Arts. I mean, some of these things. Listen, here's the thing about it. Mm-hmm. Rather than me give you a list of we know of approximately 400 agencies, and you can't say precisely because something may or may not be an agency, but depending on how you want to define it. But if you're going to get rid,
the government doesn't even know how many agencies it has.
Well, precisely. But listen, there's a criteria, and has to be a plan of attack. George S. Patton famously said that an imperfect plan, violently and recklessly executed is better than the perfect plan sitting on the shelf. So the plan starts with: can the agency be can it be supported constitutionally? And if it can't, it's got to go. And I tell you, the welfare state's got to go. I mean, we're talking about right now. Just think about this: the Democrats have been, and I expect they're going to now cave and let the government roll. Now they've got a communist in New York City. They'll be so giddy that they won't worry about stopping the government shutdown anymore. But they were trying to force SNAP benefits for illegals. They wanted to force spending for that. First of all, why are you spending any money on the illegals? But the more fundamental question is, why are we doing these SNAP benefits at the federal level anyway? In other words, food stamp programs. Why are people from the federal government being allowed to receive benefits without work? The welfare state is not a product. It is not a constitutionally ordained product that we should be supporting anymore. So it's going to be radical.
But what about the general welfare clause, Don?
General welfare clause, that's pretty funny. General welfare clause in the preamble is not a justification for the welfare state. It means the well-being of the people, not the welfare state. Article 1, Section 8 is where you look primarily for the basic duties that the Congress has, and the Congress is supposed to be the principal organ of the government, which was created in Article 1, the presidency or the executive in Article 2. So, but that's what they'll say. They'll try to argue the general welfare clause, but that is simply not the case.
No, I totally agree with you.
Right.
I know they take the general welfare clause completely out of context. Okay, and they don't understand that the general welfare clause means the welfare of everyone,
right,
not specific individuals.
Right, and the welfare clause is in the preamble. We the people of the United States.
Actually, no. It's also in Article 1, Section 8,
That's
first
right.
paragraph.
You're correct. You're right about that, but it is not. But it is. You're correct in your interpretation. It has to do with the general well-being of the people. There's never, uh, in fact, when you go back to the whole mantra of the American Revolution, taxation without representation, the whole point of the American Revolution was to have a slimmed down federal government, and that's the whole purpose of federalism anyway. When you look at the relationship between what the federal government should be and the state governments, you're looking at the basic. You're looking at certainly the U.S. military is constitutionally defendable under the Commerce Clause. By regulation of interstate commerce, you can talk interstate highways and roadways and airports and things of this nature. The post office is constitutionally authorized, although post office certainly needs a major overhaul.
Before we go further, Don, thank you for answering that. My purpose was to understand what are examples of when you say 2/3, it's very vague. It doesn't give us a clear understanding of what you're looking to target, what you're looking to do for the general voter or even for myself. You've answered that, so I thank you for giving me a better understanding.
My pleasure.
I do also want to introduce one of our co-hosts as well, which is Mr. Frank Johnson. He joined us a little bit late. He's been quiet and waiting. Frank, what's up?
Yeah, I had a little bit of a long day at the office today, and I was driving in. By the time I got the invite to show up on the show, Don, thank you very much for being on the show tonight, and thank you also for throwing your hat into the ring, because as my wife told me, if I decided to do it myself, I would be living out in the garage at bare minimum. Now, I heard you're currently residing in the Charlotte area during your campaign. I happen to live in Charlotte. I'm right here in Mint Hill, North Carolina. I would hope that at some point, after we establish some friendliness this evening, that you and I would be able to sit down face to face and maybe go over some of your policy positions a little bit more in depth, and maybe in a I don't know, maybe a different environment. Because I noticed that according to one of the photographs on your website, I happen to see a over/under top rate 12 gauge,
Right.
and I was curious as to which model that was. That it looked like a Franchi. I can't be sure.
Beretta. I'll have to check the model on it. I've got it at the house. I'll check that and get back with you. But it's an over/under Beretta, and it's really more. It's more for show than it is for shooting. Now, you have me in the office here, and I could pull out a variety of weapons I have with me at the moment, including a few ARs that are here in the office.
No, we can't pull out any. We learned the hard way a long time ago on here that anytime that we're simulcasting to YouTube like we're doing tonight, as soon as a firearm shows up, YouTube kills our feed. And not only kills the feed at the moment that the firearm arrives on scene, but it deletes the entirety of the show previous to that.
No show and tell. No show and tell.
Yeah,
it's too bad.
No, because if they were show and tell, we could probably go to about 4 o'clock in the morning. My safe ain't too far away from me. Now you're in North Carolina. I wanted to say I was listening to your point of view with when it comes to right to life. Yeah. And your value of it. I have never heard somebody use the inheritance argument as a means of being able to justify, the protection of life, because everybody, nobody ever looks back on that and as a means of legal protection that's being denied somebody. That's one more thing that they're being. So kudos to you, because that is a brand new approach, and I think you've got some serious legal legs under that.
Right.
Thank you. That's a fresh approach. I mean, some of the approaches that I've always had in trying to convince people to extend my ideas have always seemed a little bit too past the fringe for people to be able to stomach, but I come up with some crazy ideas.
Well, and the inheritance argument is I'm pointing out that there's an inconsistency, an unconstitutional inconsistency in the way the law treats the unborn. And the inheritance argument is probably one of the strongest. People can understand that. So why are you giving that baby absolute right to inherit from the moment of conception on the one hand, but then you think you can just take the baby's life on the other hand?
Yeah.
just because somebody might not want the life. You see, it's not consistent. Anyway, I didn't mean to go off on a tangent there, but I appreciate your
No,
feedback.
but I think that's a brilliant approach to it, because you're not only depriving somebody of the due process to life, you're depriving them of the due process of inheritance. So
Right.
it's a double whammy right there. You've got two strikes right there. And I've never heard anybody make that approach. Everybody always makes listen, we can't even make the scientific approach anymore, because we can't even identify what a woman is anymore in this country. So trying to designate exactly when life begins, to try to explain that to people who don't understand the XXXY. Science went out the window 6 years ago, with COVID. Science disappeared. And when it comes to the other arguments that we always make, where people always try to make the moral or religiosity, argument when it comes to protecting life. Most of the people that are, quote unquote, pro-choice don't view either of those as being valid, because one, they have no moral compass, and two, they don't believe in religion. Or at least a religion that goes beyond what the government is powerful enough to do. And as we heard somebody in New York earlier today say, there is no problem too big for government to handle. Well,
Right.
and it just goes to show that, well, considering 95% of the problems that we have are government created, maybe, you as a military officer, I'm sure you've heard of the term flat spin. When a plane goes into a flat spin, and you talk to the pilots, and what do they tell you? You can try everything you can to try and recover that aircraft. Rudder left, rudder right, push that. Most of them, they tell you, hands off, feet off.
Right.
Let the plane will recover itself if you let it do what the plane is supposed to do. And that's the same thing with the free market economy. That's the same thing with government. The less involvement government has, and the more that we rely on the people to do what they do naturally, the better things are going to run. It needs a minimal amount of oversight in order for things to work the way nature intended it to work. So you eliminating departments, excellent. Your stance on on life, excellent. You're a Second Amendment guy, although I would tell you, update one picture at least so you have an AR in it, because you don't want nobody calling you a FUD between then and now.
I show you a couple right now, but you've given me the warning, so there you go. Anyhow,
All right. Well, like I said, I hope that one day you and I could sit or stand next to each other, and maybe the fresh aroma of of gunpowder will be in the air as we try to compete for who can hit 1,000 on iron sights. That would.
I'll give my cell offline. You let me know. Make it happen, Frank. You got it.
Absolutely. Now, being in North Carolina, we've got there are moderates I don't believe exist in North Carolina. You've got a far left class, and then you've got a traditional right conservative class. I don't see a whole lot of moderates. I don't speak to a whole lot of moderates. And I speak to hundreds of people every day with just what I do and where I work. When it comes to people on the left that have been so entrenched in the welfare society, what are we going to try and do to them? Because you're going to have to win some of their votes to win a position in North Carolina politics. There's no two ways about it. You've got the 485 circle is predominantly left. You've got such a tremendous welfare class in there. How are you going to sway those people to come to your side without them having to go and experience the Mondami effect of living under complete, socialist, communist control? Because Charlotte, for the most part, even though the people vote to the left, the lifestyle still is center, but their belief is left. It's an interesting dichotomy here. Charlotte is one of the 10 fastest growing cities in the country. It's also becoming one of the most unsafe cities in the country. We've got real estate prices. We've been down here 6 years. The price of our home has nearly doubled in 6 years. Everything has become so unaffordable down here. The people here, I know you're running for a national office, but you're still going to have to charm these people in some way to be able to say, how are we going to make a difference at a national level to you here at the local level? Is there any formula that you could use that you can try to tell these people that your job in Washington, how it reflects here locally?
These are good questions. When I got off of active duty in the Navy and moved to the Charlotte area in '92, there was a 6-5 Republican majority. I now live in Waxhaw, but have an office in Charlotte, so I'm in the area. I'm in my Charlotte office at the moment, even as we were being interviewed tonight. The issues that have affected North Carolina negatively in this what the Western. I'll come back to Charlotte in a second because, as you pointed, first of all, let me deal with Charlotte. Charlotte, when I moved to the area, 6-5 Republican majority on the county commission and the city council. There was a Republican mayor, first Richard Vinroot, then Pat McCrory. Sue Myrick had been the mayor of Charlotte. She later on served with distinction in Congress. And the city was a pro-business city. It was run by pro-business Republicans. The Panthers came, Bank of America eventually came here. But then something began to happen, and city began to turn blue. And I used to represent Chrysler as an attorney in all of South Carolina, Western North Carolina. Detroit was one of the richest and most beautiful cities in the nation. It's gone to hell in a handbasket, and I've always been concerned about Charlotte becoming Detroit. The first order of business here is to deal with the law and order problem in the criminal explosion. You all know, you've probably seen the terrible video of this poor girl, Irina, who was a legitimate immigrant from Ukraine being brutally murdered on the Charlotte light rail. When that happened, I became the first and the only U.S. Senate candidate to immediately call on President Trump to bring the National Guard in to stabilize the light rail. He has not done it. 2 weeks later, the Fraternal Order of Police, Lodge number 9 in Charlotte, joined me in calling for President Trump to do that. I have spoken with the president of the Fraternal Order of Police in Charlotte, and he tells me that Charlotte has fewer police officers on the street now than it had in 2018, but the population of the city has grown by 60,000. Now, that has put an inexcusable strain on the Charlotte-Mecklenburg Police Department. So I think with the city of Charlotte, you have to start with law and order and the foolish crime that goes on around here. We have several blue counties in North Carolina. North Carolina is becoming more and more predominantly red. We expect within a few weeks the Republican registration totally will eclipse Democrat registration. The trend is in our favor, but we do have blue pockets. I was in Durham, which is one of those blue pockets. You look at Mecklenburg County in North Carolina. Wake is the largest, followed by Mecklenburg, Guilford, Durham, Forsyth. Was in Durham County at a candidate forum with a conservative group, and there is no Republican running for mayor there. And the group had the Democrat that they think has the most common sense. And this lady got up and talked, and she was talking about they have a thing in the Durham Police Department called the HEART program, HEART, where they put a shrink in a car with the police officer. And, and they're paying a shrink to be in the car with a police officer. They could take that money and they could hire more police officers. We just spent money on some sort of large, museum here in Charlotte, $1.6 million that could be used to hire more officers. So people are concerned about law and order. The other thing, though, in Charlotte, we've got to do, you got 30% of registered Republicans out, you could sweep the city. So we've got to do a better job of trying to sweep the city. But I'm going to argue that if we lose the U.S. dollar, it's going to be a disaster for the entire state of North Carolina everywhere. If you know history, and you gentlemen do, you know that every great power that ever dominated the world, from the Romans, which had the denarius, to the Dutch that had the gilding, the Spanish, when Columbus discovered America, had the peso. They used to say the sun would never set on British soil. The Brits had the pound sterling, which fell to the dollar as the international currency of trade at Bretton Woods. And the United States became the sole economic superpower of the world, which benefits us all. When your currency falls, you fall very, very quickly from the leadership of the world stage, and there's a negative downward effect on everyone's economic power and cost of living. And so I'm going to continue to preach that message. Locally, though, I've been to the 25 mountain counties, and I'm happy with my opponent, not happy with either of my opponents. Hurricane Helene blew in on September 27th of last year. It took Joe Biden until October 3rd to mobilize the U.S. military. As a military officer, I'm calling on a couple of additional unified commands under the United States military, one being United States Disaster Relief Command, under which, and this will affect all of North Carolina, help North Carolina because we are the most hurricane-prone state in the country. I grew up in the Outer Banks, have been through a bunch of them. But U.S. Disaster Relief Command would be a new unified command to the military.
I'm going to pause you for just a second because I want to challenge you on that.
Challenge me on anything you want. So
how do you justify that constitutionally?
How do I justify it constitutionally? Well, two ways. The Congress has the power under Article 1, Section 8 to raise an Army and a Navy and to put in regulations for an Army and Navy, and the President's commander-in-chief. You justify it constitutionally if you're trying to raise a policy comitatus issue. This is not a police organizational use of the United States military. It's humanitarian use. As a matter of fact, even during...
How do you justify federal aid to a disaster area?
How do you justify federal aid to a disaster area?
Well, in the Constitution is that justified?
There is no specific provision for federal aid to a disaster area, but the Army and Navy certainly, I think, have a role in. Let me rephrase. The United States military has been used to all over the world for disaster relief. Okay, and there's been
constitutional.
What's that now?
Because it's done doesn't mean it's constitutional.
Well, why is it unconstitutional? I mean,
because it's not in the Constitution.
Well, okay, but a lot of things are not in the Constitution.
Exactly.
That's
if it's not in the Constitution, it's unconstitutional.
Well, if it is contrary to the Constitution, it's unconstitutional. I think I'll challenge you on that. A lot of things are not specifically in the Constitution. The question isn't whether it's in or not. The question is, is it contrary?
There's a reason why the Constitution was written to give specific authority to our government.
Right.
Okay. That was so that they didn't have to come up with every instance of things that they can't do. Instead, they chose to specifically define what they could do. And they did not have authority to exceed those limited powers.
Agree with you. I agree with you on that.
Okay. So if it's not in the Constitution, then they do not have the authority to transgress there.
The Constitution gives
very defined specific powers.
That's right. To raise an Army and Navy and set the regulations for the Army and Navy, and and in Article 2, the President's commander-in-chief. Okay. Now, right. I could say to you this: why was it constitutional or not constitutional for Jefferson and the Barbary Pirates Wars to send the Army and the Navy in to protect American shipping? Doesn't specifically say anything about the Barbary Pirates from American shipping, but I think that is inherent in the Commander-in-Chief clause for Jefferson to have done that. It is constitutional, in my opinion, because of the inherent right to raise an Army and Navy and make rules and regulations, and to give the President the authority as Commander-in-Chief. Now, if you're using the United States military to deprive citizens of life, liberty, and property, and that use is not constitutional. So you have to look at the use to determine, again, it goes back to the issue, is it contrary to the constitutional purpose or not? Now, I don't think providing immediate humanitarian aid to Americans in a disaster situation is unconstitutional at all. I don't think you can make that argument. Now, maybe you might try to make that argument. I don't think you can. I think you could make the argument, certainly, if you're using the United States military for nefarious purposes to deprive of life, liberty, and property. That's not what I'm talking about. So it's a good discussion. I appreciate it, but that's the way I'd respond.
Mm-hmm. I could potentially see immediate disaster response in the form of rescues. That is humanitarian.
Okay, right.
Okay. However, using federal money to rebuild and stuff like that, that is completely unconstitutional.
Well, you didn't hear me say rebuild, did you? You use
Okay.
it. All right.
But going in, respond as far as saving life and that type of stuff, yeah, I can see that.
You cut me off with a question before I could complete my answer, and I'll complete it if it's okay. The United States Disaster Relief Command would have water, generators, humanitarian stuff. You know, in other words, you drop in stuff to save American lives, okay, and to protect American lives in the first 24 to 48 hours of a disaster. Okay, I'm not talking about rebuilding or anything like that. I'm talking about life saving primarily.
Okay, that argument I will buy because that is defense of the United States.
That is exactly what the United States Disaster Relief Command would be charged with doing. If you go back,
that I can get on board with, and that argument is completely valid.
And if you look at what happened again in Helene in Western North Carolina, the storm hits the 27th of September. Biden finally mobilized the U.S. military October the 3rd. We had Chinook helicopters, Black Hawk helicopters. If you had those helicopters, say you stationed them at Fort Bragg, and they're good to go, you save lives immediately, because we all know that in the first 24 hours after a disaster is the most crucial time for life saving and saving property. So that's one thing that I would certainly advocate. Another thing is, and this affects North Carolina, the entire nation, I want to see another unified command called United States Border Command, again with a 4-star general or admiral. And I think what we've seen here, and as I've mentioned to you, gentlemen, I've been in 65 counties. I've probably talked to a dozen sheriffs around the state of North Carolina. I've asked the question, what's your fentanyl situation now that the borders have been sealed? Every one of them told me it's gotten better, but you've got to bring the military in. It's a part of our national security. And I think, God bless the Border Patrol. They're being swamped in large part because Biden was opening doors and letting them in. But it's going to take a coordinated effort of the United States military to seal the borders. So I'm advocating that as well.
Okay, so actually that kind of is where I was wanting to go for a little bit. By the way, I did find, for anyone who's looking it up, I did find your comment on September 9th of this year, as reported by WUNC, which is North Carolina Public Radio. And in that article, which covers several issues in the race going forward, in one of your complaints against the RNC, because of preferential treatment. People can read the article, they'll see the whole thing. But they did give you the last sentence where you did call on President Trump to bring in the National Guard to help resolve North Carolina. So in that vein, and you're talking about creating a Department of Border, which would be expanding the government, even though you're looking to shrink the government. Well, given that problem where immigration is looking at many of us having to do things that we may not have envisioned initially, we have Zoran Mandami is now the mayor of New York City. He's a Democratic Socialist. He believes in open borders, and he will continue to support a sanctuary city status for New York City. At the same time, Donald Trump has effectively closed the border 93% since he's been in, which has restricted inflow. And we have seen a massive effort on mass deportations, which we've seen with National Guard troops in Chicago, Portland, LA as examples. Also in Memphis, where they've been exceptionally successful and well received by the mayor there. But again, that's the difference of Democrats versus Republicans. But that being said, in the Senate, what do you believe the U.S. Senate's reaction should be to sanctuary cities like New York City when they are run by and explicitly standing by a sanctuary city status, which violates U.S. federal immigration law?
Well, that's a great question. It's a loaded question. Let me very benignly correct you.
I didn't mean it to be loaded.
loaded
Wanted
in
to
a
make
good,
sure I made clear
loaded in
what we're talking about.
loaded in a good way with a lot of good points for consideration. Let me very benignly correct you on one thing you said. You said I was looking to expand the government. No, I'm talking about reorganizing the United States military to add another unified command.
So you'd be splitting it like a Coast Guard, but just for the border. Is that what you mean?
Well, look, we have the military assets and capability. No, not a. You see, I'm a military guy. Not everybody else
So am I.
understands that. But
So
our
am I.
command. Okay, so you understand we have 11 unified commands in the United States. 6 that are geographic. I don't want to go too deep. 6 that are geographic centered, like Indo-Pacific Command, Central Command, Atlantic Command, Southern Command. Those are geographic commands. Then we have mission-centric commands, such as United States Transportation Command, SOCOM, Special Operations Command, Cyber Command. These are mission-specific commands. We would simply have additional mission-specific commands within the military.
Okay, so you're looking at within,
Yeah.
because you were in specific.
Right.
So that's why I'm trying to understand why I said it the way I did.
Right.
It's because it was in specific. So it's not creating another department,
Oh, right.
but you're looking at within, say, the Army as an example.
Right. Correct.
So you would be bringing U.S. military into U.S. oil.
Take one of these
under the border.
4-star General Admiral will be in charge of United States Disaster Relief Command. Another one in charge of United States Border Command. Okay, and their job is to keep the border sealed. So the Chinook helicopters and Black Hawk helicopters might be assigned to the 82nd Airborne Division, and then they rotate over to Border Command. They rotate assets into this command if it's a Border Command, with the job of sealing the border, and we have the technology and the equipment to seal the border, as we're doing now. We can do even better, but we pretty much shut it down. So that's what I'm talking about. Okay. Let me go to your question on the sanctuary city. United States Senate. First off, I believe that the notion of trying to create something called a sanctuary city in violation of United States immigration law is a violation of law, and I think those civic leaders, mayors, anyone, sheriff, whoever, should be prosecuted criminally for interfering with United States immigration law, because this is a matter of national security. And in addition to that, to the extent that these cities have received federal funding, every dime should be cut. They're on their own, and they want to violate the law. Let them twist on their own. So those are the 2 points that I would make: prosecute and defund. Defund the sanctuary cities and see how far they're going to get, as long as they continue to violate the law.
Would that also extend to states such as California, Washington State, Oregon, Colorado?
Yes, of course.
Texas, New York.
1,000%, absolutely. Okay. There's this thing, Article 6, called the Supremacy Clause of the Constitution, and while we want state law to govern primarily, but you cannot contradict and directly violate federal law. The purpose of the federal government is to keep us secure as a nation. And when you have open borders, we lost more Americans in 1 year to fentanyl than in 10 years in the Vietnam War. The fentanyl has been a weapon of mass destruction that the Democrats allowed to be brought into. In fact, somebody should be prosecuted for that decision alone. It's a matter of, it's a treasonous policy that's caused many millions of Americans to lose their lives. So
treasonous?
Absolutely. Listen. We're playing semantics with words, but you are.
I'm not. That's why I'm asking the question. It's a very specific and very big word. It has much impact.
And I use the phrase treasonous. Let me explain what I mean. This fentanyl is largely being manufactured in communist China, which is a military foe of the United States, a nation that is communist and embraces a philosophy that is 180% opposite of who we are. Brought in through Mexico by policies from a Democrat federal government that has killed Americans dead. In other words, they have taken they have allowed a weapon of mass destruction to come in and kill Americans, and either intentionally or inadvertently, and it has been treasonous in nature for sure, because you're aiding an enemy of the United States to kill Americans if you stop and think about it. And that's why I use that phrase. I wasn't trying to necessarily look at the legal elements of treason under the United States Code, but I use the phrase treasonous because that's the way I feel about it. And that's why I think there should be prosecutions for those who are violating the immigration law and allowing these sanctuary cities, which basically are their way of perpetuating what the Biden administration did to us for the 4 years after it, occupied the White House, or wouldn't occupy the White House.
Okay. Again, I was just looking for the clarification on when you said treasonous, but thank you for that clarification.
You bet.
And I understand your position on the sanctuary cities and states. I thank you for clarifying that as well.
My pleasure. You guys ask good questions, by the way. Give me some more. That's good. Bring it on, baby. Bring it on.
I've been doing this a long time.
Were you good at it?
I can go for days.
Yeah, please don't assume that you're in an enemy camp with some of the questions that we ask you. It's just that we hold everybody's feet to the fire equally, because we each take our responsibility extremely serious, and there's nothing that we hold more dear than our country. And we always like to make sure that the people that we're going to say, okay, please go and represent us, are going to do so in the best possible way. Now, these guys have heard me say it 1,000 times that, the problem I feel with Washington and with politicians is the word leader. And we always hear congressional leader, some Senate leader, this leader, that leader. They've gotten so far detached from the idea that they're representatives and not leaders. The people are the leaders of the country. They're just there to represent our will in the vote. And so many of these people who go to Washington, D.C. get so puffed up in the shirt with this idea that they're better than somebody else. They're not. They're no more or less important than the wealthiest person in their constituency to the homeless guy sitting there, seeking shelter from the rain in a bus stop. Nobody is more or less important, and nobody's voice is more or less important. And people who go to represent us, me personally, I like to know that they understand that there is that separation there. You're not there to, the honorable this, the honorable that. Listen, enough with the bullshit. And I'm the guy who uses the foul language on the show, so don't get. I'm sure you've heard more than you share. I'm the guy that I call everybody out to the carpet on it, because they get so full of themselves to the point where, whatever happened to the citizen representative that the founding fathers envisioned when it comes to people going to Washington?
Yeah.
You got Nancy Pelosi is now announcing her potential retirement in 2028 or 2026. That woman should have been gone 25 years ago. Chuck Schumer should have been gone 25 years ago. There should have been 2 terms done. You're out. Get the new people in there. The people you cannot represent your constituency if you're not forced to live like your constituency. And these people have been living high on the hog on the American tax dollar and through media coddling for far too long. It's refreshing when somebody comes out and says, listen, I'm not going there to be a leader, I'm being your representative. This is what I think people have to start seeing more of, because as long as the voting class, see that there's this separation between the person who they elect. I mean, Teddy Roosevelt had open door policy at the White House. You could walk into the White House, sign your name in, and go see the President of the United States. There was no appointment necessary. He had an open policy like that. Forgot Eisenhower, our last real military person who held the office of White House. And I know this for a fact because my dad spent a lot of time with the man. He would stop his motorcade, go into a restaurant, and sit there and just talk with the people that were there. He'd stop for lunch and talk with people. There was no pretense with some of these people. Now, you get these people. The closest I see to a citizen representative anymore is John Fetterman.
Yeah.
Now, granted, some of his ideas and his ideological, beliefs, I am in stark contrast with. But he's the most regular guy on Capitol Hill right now. I don't know if Vass, listen, you sit there, you listen to the guy. He talks like one of us. He acts like one of us. He dresses
Really,
like.
I hope not. He's brain damaged and he shouldn't be in office.
Well, he's gotten a lot better since the stroke than beforehand.
I don't care. He's still broken and he is incapable of doing the job. And I don't care if he's a Republican, Democrat, or anything else in a given day. He should not.
You know what? I don't care if he's you say he's incapable. I don't know what he's incapable of. So far,
damaged his. We won't go into.
All right, let me ask you a question. If you want to sit down and have an IQ contest between him and Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez or any of the other ones on the squad, which would you rather put your money on?
None of them.
Well,
I don't want any of them.
I'd rather have a conversation with Fetterman because I believe at least he's open to ideas.
Your overall point, though, is very, very well taken. In that, listen, the way I feel about it is the lowest private in the Army, the lowest seaman in the Navy, lowest airman in the U.S. Air Force is more important to our country than the highest so-called leader in the United States Congress. We got to have a Congress understand that. But those men and women in the armed forces are willing, and law enforcement are willing to put their lives on the line. That's where it's at. And I agree with you. The Constitution begins with three beautiful words: "We the people of the United States," in order to form a more perfect union. Everything flows from there. The establishment of the Congress flows from there. It's interesting because, and I'm critical on the Republican Party. I'm critical when it's appropriate, but it was the Democrat Party and Democrat Congresses that basically, in 4 historical periods, starting in 1913 under Woodrow Wilson with this "War Must Be Made Safe for Democracy," the passage of the 16th Amendment, the authorized income taxes, the first Income Tax Act, and the Federal Reserve Act that year, and then you move into the FDR era. You have the beginning of the explosion of the deep state there with the New Deal, and then LBJ lops it on with the Great Society, and then you have Obamacare, which is a federal takeover of healthcare. These are all instances in which Democrat Congresses have created a monopolistic deep state that is an absolute threat to us, to our liberties and freedoms, and that's why we're about to lose $1. And the members of Congress go along with it. Our Republican Congresses have done nothing really to. Now they've slowed down the rate of damage that we're getting from the Democrats. You don't have the same type of assault with these major programs being passed generally on a Republican Congress. We've done very little to rip that stuff up and turn the government back to the people. And you're absolutely right about that. There's a sense of entitlement, a sense of elitism in both parties. You find very, very few that embrace the notion of a citizen legislature, which is what it was meant to be. So your point's very, very well taken.
It's like one of these things I always hear everybody talk, we cut spending, we did this, we did that. What they do is they come in and they project. Now, this is just a figurative number off the top of my head. We're gonna spend $1.5 trillion next year. And then they come back and they go, hey, great news. We're cutting the budget because we're only going to spend $1.45 trillion. Right. You're still spending $1.5 trillion. Yeah. You didn't cut anything. Yeah. You just cut back your proposal.
They've cut the rate, but as I started at the beginning of this interview, the national debt is currently exploding at approximately $37,000 a second. That means that the debt grows at about $37,000 a second, down from maybe $55,000 a second under the Democrats. But it's kind of like, you're a heroin addict. You come up and say, I'm an addict, but I'm getting it under control. I used to only do 2 snorts a night. Now I'm doing 1. You're still killing yourself. And we're still killing our country by this insidious rate of spending, which the Republican Party has got zero plan to attack it. We got to have a plan to attack it.
And then let's not even discuss our unfunded liabilities like Social Security and all the rest of the stuff that's out there. That Ponzi scheme that's going to be, and I mean, you got the Paul Ryan, not Paul Ryan, Rand Paul out there talking about how it's going to be necessary to raise the retirement age to 70 if we're going to remain solvent when it comes to Social Security. It went from 62 to 65, then to 67. Now it's going to have to go to 70 because we're just getting to the point where we're going to run out. And as far as we get where people are living longer and longer and longer, that unfunded liability is going to continue to increase to the point where we're going to have to wind up either raising it to 70 or 72, or we're going to wind up having to contribute at least 25% of our income in order to sustain it. And it's going to be 12.5% from your employer, 12.5% from you, and the employers are not going to be too thrilled with having to kick in. And right now it's 7.5. They're going to wind up having to go up to 12.5. They're not going to be happy about that. What is that going to wind up doing to people's income? If your employer now has to punch in another 5.5% to cover your Social Security contribution, that 5.5% is going to have to come from somewhere. He's going to have to raise the prices on the goods and services he produces, or he's going to have to wind up dropping the amount of pay that he's given you in order to facilitate the increase in Social Security. And if they do that, and then you start looking at what Obamacare is costing everybody and the people, whatever employees are contributing to that. When I worked on Wall Street 30 years ago, my boss covered all of my healthcare expenses. The only thing I had was a minimal copay, and it was like a $30 a paycheck contribution. And I sat and I looked at one of my old pay stubs right now, and I rated it according to Obamacare. My healthcare contributions and Social Security contributions would right now be 12% more than what my take-home pay would be if I would use the same formulas that's been used. Now, all of these people, like in New York, and they see what's going on, they think the free bus is going to be free. They think that the free tolls are going to be free. They think everything is going to, you're going to freeze rents. Great. Well, what happens when electricity continues to go up, gas continues to go up, fuel oil continues to go up, taxes continue to go up? How are you going to freeze rents if you're making it unfeasible for the property owner to maintain the property at the rent that he's coming in? Now they're going to be in default, and that's what their idea is. The more homeowners go into default in New York City, the more that New York City gets to come in, foreclose on houses, turn it into city-owned property, and then they can have their utopia. People don't understand how huge the picture is and how interrelated all these costs are. And as much as we'd love to say, Washington can handle, some stuff and we can do stuff at Washington level, people don't realize how much at the municipal level has to be done too. I'm wishing you all the luck in the world. I want you to get in there, kick some ass, burn down everything that you can. Burn it down, tear. That's me. I'm a burn it down kind of guy. If it don't work, break it and get rid of it. I don't know how many times I started I'm a furniture baker. I don't know how many times I started a piece of furniture and 90% of the way through, I didn't like the way it came out, so I just took it apart. If it's not right, if your foundation's not right, the house is not going to stand.
The deep state has to be dismantled. We got to go to war against the deep state. One thing Doge showed us is that the deep state of the federal government is a criminal enterprise. And these agencies have got to go. The tax system's got to be overhauled. And we got to be at the tip of the spear, and we got to be strong. Understand, when you start taking away a baby's candy, it's going to scream and cry. But if we don't do it, we're going to lose the country. We're in the point right now, we're either going to save the country or we're not. And despite a lot of positive things that have happened during the Trump administration already, including sealing the border, reducing fentanyl deaths, preserving the capital gains cut, preserving the tax cuts that were put in his first term, all that, aside from all that, we're going to go off a ledge if we don't attack the spending problem that we have. We are like a bunch of drunk sailors, about a bunch of drug addicts. We just spin and spin and spin and snort. We got to attack the problem. And the Republican Party's got to lead the assault in attacking the problem. We can't worry about somebody whining and complaining, because we're going to, all the stuff they want. It's kind of like Margaret Thatcher famously said, the problem with socialism is you originally run out of other people's money to spend. or worse to that effect. And but you
Works,
got to
it works perfectly until you run out of someone else's money.
yeah, right, kind of like that exactly. And but you got to keep getting the word out there. Eventually, and I think there's a hunger, even though what happened in New York City is a catastrophic failure of two institutions that serve the nation. Think about it. I mean, not only do you have a communist Muslim who should never even be in this country to begin with, marking a failure of our legal immigration problem. See, the problem is not just illegal immigration where we've opened the borders. The problem also is legal immigration. You should not have someone who embraces Sharia law able to immigrate into the United States, period, because that is a philosophy that is an anathema to the Constitution. This guy should not even be in the country. So his presence in the country, just like Ilhan Omar or whoever else you might, choose to exemplify, is a failure of the legal immigration system. It's got to be fixed and narrowed down. Get rid of Sharia immigration, get rid of blockchain. All that started in the 65 Hart-Celler Act. But it's also a catastrophic failure of education. And there's no federal role for education. The North Carolina Constitution guarantees the right to public education. But here's the thing about it. It isn't just the fact that our test scores have slipped vis-a-vis the Pacific Rim nations, okay? Ever since the federal government started getting involved with the Department of Education, even before under ESEA and with Lyndon Johnson, it isn't just that. It's that we are not teaching morality, we're not teaching Judeo-Christian concepts, and we're not teaching American exceptionalism in the schools. If we had been doing all that, you wouldn't have a situation where you worry about a bunch of fools who will put a fool in the office to begin with. The issue is the fool in the office. The issue is the fools up there in New York that are willing to put them in the office. And that's a catastrophic failure in the education system.
Well, there's a lot of reasons why New York failed, and they failed epically. I do not deny that. This is going to be a problem, especially since all of the policies of Mondami are proven failures in the United States already. He's copy-pasting failed policies from Kansas City, from Eugene, Oregon, from all across the country. It is going to be catastrophic. It will affect the entire state. But you said something there that I don't know, and I want to understand. You said that Mondami is going to be instituting, or he follows, Sharia law. I'm not aware of that.
Well,
I was following the election. I live in New York. I'm not familiar with that. What law or what legislation is that?
Well, I didn't say that he was going to institute Sharia law. What I said is he's from a Sharia nation. He was allowed
to say that. But okay, yes, he is.
Yeah, that's what I meant to say. And I'm saying if you have anyone who appears to have embraced Sharia law should not be allowed to immigrate into the United States to begin with.
Okay. That's clarification. Okay.
Yeah, now, if you go to Dearborn, Michigan, you can see examples of no-go zones. I've been to London and Paris, into the Saint-Denis section of Paris, where the Cathedral Saint-Denis is. I could tell you stories on that. It's taken over by Islamic immigrants, and the local police won't even go in there. Okay, but how crazy is it? It was crazy for Bush. First of all, Bush 41, and then Clinton to push NAFTA and most favored nation status to China, and putting in the World Trade Organization. You put your principal economic competitor on steroids to compete against you and destroy your industry. It's just as crazy to allow immigration from areas where there is a political philosophy that wants to take out the United States Constitution and supplant that philosophy in place of the Constitution. It's idiotic, and it needs to stop.
No, I agree with that. I agree with
that. I applaud you for having the courage to say it, because too many people who, vie for these positions don't want to say it. They don't want. They don't want to.
Courage to say it. Our country is going to die if we don't say it. Listen, we don't have time, guys. That's one reason I'm running. We don't have time to pussyfoot around and continue with politics as usual.
Well, that's the thing. Everybody is walking around being way too goddamn politically correct to be able to turn around and say what needs to be said. And the fact of the matter is, you have a lot of people immigrating to this country under false pretenses. They're coming in as sheep, wolves dressed in sheep clothing, and they're coming here with the specific ideology of undermining our government, undermining our country, taking over our states, city by city by city, and implementing their way of life. People do not come here and bring their nation with them. If you're going to come to the United States, it's because you want to be part of the American fabric, not turn the American fabric into something different. If you want something different, stay where the hell you are. But that's not their goal. Their goal is totalitarianism. And I listen, I say it 100 times. I don't care if somebody's going to call me one word or another word. I don't care. I honestly, my life is not going to be long enough for me to give a damn. I just want to live my life, love my country, and be free. That's what I want.
Right.
But when I see people come here and I see the examples of what they've done, my neighborhood back in Brooklyn, New York, where I was born and raised, I can't find a single storefront in English. I can't walk from 72nd Street to 65th Street 4 times of the day without traffic coming to a complete standstill and thousands of people out in the street on rugs praying. I cannot understand. I cannot fathom it. And then you get spit on, you get attacked, you get criticized, you get maligned for saying, what happened to my neighborhood? What happened to my country? And they tell you, you're not welcome here. We just had a mayor in some city, Dearborn, Michigan, whoever the hell it is, tells an American citizen who was born and raised in Dearborn, you are not welcome here. And I am going to have a parade when you leave. Who the hell is this guy think he is to tell an American citizen born and raised in this country that he's not welcome in his own city? It is disgraceful. Now, when half of my family came here in the 1700s, I have a little bit of Native American ancestry in me that have been here since I can't even trace back when, and I'm also second generation American. My grandparents came here. When my grandfather came to this country, he came here with an Italian to English dictionary and a bag full of clothes. That's what he came. But when he came here and he had to apply for the right to come here, he had to explain what his skills were, what he was going to bring to the country. He had to do all this stuff, and they had a link on the thing, and I have a copy. I have a copy of his immigration papers from when he had to go through Ellis Island in New York City. There was a category on there that said undesirable. And if they checked your box as being undesirable, you got shipped the hell back from where you came from. And I don't think that box exists anymore.
Well, listen, here's the thing. The United States legal immigration system worked pretty well up until 1965. The Immigration Act of '52, the Karen Act, under that act, we brought in German rocket scientists that formed the basis of the Apollo moonshot.
That was Operation Paperclip.
There you go. And so the purpose of United States immigration at that time was to bring in folks if there was an absolute need in the United States, either from a national security standpoint, production standpoint, whatever, that wasn't taking U.S. jobs. You brought them in, they came in, but the Democrats, you see, said that system was discriminatory, as if, we don't have a right to discriminate against who we bring into this country. But we have every right to discriminate against foreigners. They don't have the protection of the United States Constitution. So they claimed it was discriminatory and racist. So in 1965, LBJ, in helping to destroy the country as part of the whole, Great Society scheme, signed the Hart-Celler Act there at Ellis Island, which basically reduced the number of European immigrants and focused on immigration from the Sharia countries, you see. And it's there where you first had this block immigration concept. You bring one in, and he can bring every cousin, Tom, Dick, and Harry, and cousin, and granddaddy, and grandmama, and everything else. And those people aren't vetted. They're just brought in because they're related to the person. The block immigration system must come to an end, in addition to ending Sharia immigration. In addition, we've got to tighten down on legal immigration. Those who have come to this nation for the right reasons, do it the right way, are oftentimes in the first generation some of the best American citizens. If they come for the right reasons and and are coming because they yearn freedom and want to embrace the American experiment. They want to embrace the Constitution. But other areas of the world where philosophies are predominant that want to take us down should never be allowed to immigrate in. You know, President Trump, you may remember, in 2017 signed a travel ban to block temporarily immigration from about 7 or 8 Sharia countries, and the Democrats sued. You may remember that.
It wasn't Sharia, but yes, it was 7 nations.
Well, they were Muslim
based on religion.
They were primarily Muslim. Okay, listen, they were countries from high terror areas where Sharia is predominant. So you can mix it however you want to mix it or match it, Michael. But that's where they were.
Just trying to be. There's a focus on religion that isn't the focus of the law. But what I did want to say is I just have a family matter coming up, so I have to step away. But I know we're coming close to the end of the show. I look forward to speaking and watching your campaign more, Don. You got a lot of energy. I love that. And that is critical and very important in any of these elections. I know when I ran for Congress, that was something that was a factor as well. I'm looking forward to hearing a lot more about your campaign, because now we're in the 2026 season, so people need to start paying attention. Again, I'll remind them they should go to your website and check that out, look over your policies, and definitely talk to you, just like I know Frank is going to try and be able to do with you since he's in North Carolina anyway. But I thank you for taking my questions today. Guys, I just got to jump. It's family. But I'll talk to you both soon, all right?
Been an honor. Thank you, Mike.
Take care, Mike.
Fast. Have a good night. All right, so Don, just want to hit on a couple of things before we go, and I'm going to let Mike handle the rest of the show and to wrap it up. I want to tell you 3 things that are scary. I sell guns for a living, right? It's not my job. It's my job, but it's not my career. It's just what I happen to be doing at the moment right now. 3 things that scare me. I have people come in to fill out their 4473, their background check, to do what they need to do. 95% of the people above the age of 25, when I ask them to sign the documents, can fully write their name in cursive. 90% of the people that sign their name on the documents under the age of 25 do not know how to write it and do not know how to write their name in cursive. Right? That's frightening, because we don't teach it in the schools anymore. And I know that, looking to get rid of the DOE is important. It's important to me too, because we've really got to get to a point where, people start learning things. It dawned on me that the reason why they don't want to teach cursive anymore is because all of our founding documents are written in cursive. And if you can't read them, somebody else can tell you what they say. And if somebody else tells you what they can say, and we've experimented with this on the program, we've gone to Google and looked up certain things, in the Constitution, and the wording that Google gives us is completely different than the actual verbiage that's written down. So that's one failure. This is an example of how our youth is being manipulated into thinking they have one set of rights or another set of rights, or that they don't have a certain set of rights. Another thing that scares me. I get a lot of people that come in to buy a gun. The ATF and the federal government allows non-U.S. citizens to exercise Second Amendment rights, so long as they have permanent resident statuses. Right? There's a form in there they have to have a permanent resident status. There's a number that they have on their green card that allows them to fill that out, and then they go through the background check. It's usually delayed for a day or 2, but then they get approved. This needs to stop.
Agreed.
Because when I ask a lot of these people, and I have somebody from Ukraine. I had a kid from Ukraine. He's been in the country since he's 17. He's now 22. He's got a green card from Ukraine, and he's buying a handgun over the counter. And I asked him, I says, when are you going to apply for citizenship? He says, I have no interest in being a U.S. citizen. I said, then why are you here? Well, he goes, well, my country is at war. Well, why aren't you back fighting for your country? You're going to come to the United States. you are going to use your status to benefit from all the rights and privileges that every American citizen will have, but you do not want to sign your name and become part of the American family. That needs to stop. We need to stop and revoke every single firearm. And believe me, I'm a Second Amendment purist. I'm an absolutist. All right. I think the ATF should be the name of a convenience store. I think you should be able to buy whatever the hell you want to buy. All right. But when we have people that are non-citizens coming in and exercising those rights, and they do it flagrantly, where they come in and they pull out their green card, their driver's license, and their EBT card to try and buy a gun in my store. And the federal government says that's okay. The other thing that I find extremely appalling is that the 4473, as I'm sure you've probably filled out when you've purchased the firearm, you have to be 100% accurate on the 4473. You cannot have a mistake on that, otherwise it'll get rejected. You have to have everything spelt right, your name, address, date of birth, everything. Social Security number is optional for them to do the background check on you. It's optional because they still know who you are one way or the other. They want to know the 23 questions about if you've ever been convicted, if you've ever renounced your citizenship, are you the purchaser of the firearm, are you this, that, whatever else. But then they ask you a question about your gender, and they ask you male, female, or non-binary. How are you going to as an ATF, going to tell the American people that you have to be 100% accurate on a form, but then allow somebody to pull a distinction that doesn't exist? It's frightening to me. It's frightening because it's an example of the government deciding to take sides in an argument they should not be taking sides in. It should be male and female, and that's the end of it. But I will leave you with this. On no less than 5 occasions in the last 6 months, I have had an immigrant to the United States show up at my gun counter, walk up and tell me, pull out an envelope with a certificate that said, I was just sworn in as an American citizen today. I want to exercise my Second Amendment. Now, for me, that warms my heart because these are people that came in. I said, well, what else did you do? He goes, well, I've been in the country for 5 years. I went through the process. I did what I did. I just went to my swearing in ceremony in City Hall in Charlotte, and this was my first stop. Mm-hmm. So the people that want to become American citizens, that follow the law, that follow the rules, they do what they need to do. They embrace what being an American is. These are the immigrants that we have to do a better job at reaching out to and being able to show the rest of the people, yes, it is possible. Yes, there is a process. Yes, It does cost time. It does cost money. But you are going to pledge your allegiance to this country and no other because this is where you want to be. And the other thing that I would really like to see, I hope that maybe you would be someone, once you're elected and sworn in, that you might want to think about signing on to this bill. I know that there's a bill that's being introduced into Congress now that U.S. representatives must only have American citizenship. Yeah. No dual citizenship. They're not going to have a dual citizenship with Bahrain. They're not going to have a dual citizenship with Afghanistan or Israel or this and that. Now, I don't care if that other citizenship goes with a country that's got preferred nation status or not.
Agreed.
If you're an American citizen and you're going to represent the American people, you need to be American 100% or not at all.
Agreed. And frankly, I think that it's consistent with the constitutional intent. We the people of the United States, it's not we the people of the United States who have dual citizenship with Yemen or wherever. And I think that's totally consistent with the constitutional scheme and would sign on to that and support that for sure.
Well, that makes me happy. All right, it's 10 p.m. Marshall's been unceremoniously quiet for the last little while because I have a habit of being the loudmouth comic relief. Vass has a habit of being the person who I love him, but Vass is very straight laced. if he doesn't see the words, he's not going to read them. So he's, he doesn't ever let himself get off character over there. But both of you guys are constitutional scholars. I'm just an idiot who loves guns and loves my country. But listen, I just sent you a message on LinkedIn. If you jump onto that, you got my phone number. If you'd reach out to me at some point, I would love to be able to get together with you, either at your office or somewhere on the campaign trail. Maybe we'll hit a range together, grab a bite to eat, sit down and talk for a little bit. I'd like to have get you introduced to some of the people that I run in my circles here in North Carolina that I think would help benefit you a lot with your campaign. I'm in touch with a lot of the veterans groups, a lot of veteran support organizations down here, a lot of political organizations that and Dal is the bearded weirdo, but he's not on the show right now. But I'd like to be able to introduce you to some of these groups that you may not be privy of. These are some really good grassroots people that I think would appreciate and embrace you and your message and help you on your journey to Washington.
All right. Would appreciate that very much, Frank. You can shoot me an email too. I'll give my email. If anybody wants to contact me, I'm at don@brownfornc.com. So, I'm open to you guys reaching out. Anybody else that's listening or watching, don@brownfornc.com. Of course, brownfornc.com is our website also. And
right.
We'd love to have folks reach out.
We'll definitely do that. I'm going to leave now. I got to be up at 4:00 in the morning to go back to the hellhole I was just at a little while ago. So I will leave you guys as my call off. You guys be safe, shoot straight. Mike Marshall, Don Brown, Mike Vasquez, thank you very much. We'll catch you guys next time on the Weekly Roundtable. And I'm out of here.
Stay safe, Frank.
Appreciate it, guys.
Okay. Is there anything else that you want to touch on before we go ahead and wrap this up?
If you got any questions, Mr. Marshall, take your shot. Take your best shot if you want. But I do enjoy this type of interchange. Even with Voss before he left, he getting into it on the constitutionality of using the military to.
No, that was me.
Oh, that was Michael doing that, huh? That was Marshall doing that.
No, that was me.
The point is, I enjoy that type of exchange. It's I believe the proverb that iron sharpeneth iron, and
right.
We all I think here probably are singing from the same songbook, but it's good to talk through these things, and I really appreciate the opportunity to do that.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. And I'm a firm believer that if it isn't in the Constitution,
right,
then it is not allowed. Period.
That's what limited government's about.
Okay, and
all power is not specifically enumerated or returned to the states.
And you came back and you justified military use in a disaster situation because I can see that as a defense of the people.
That's it.
Okay, so I can see that. There's too many people. Okay, and this is on both sides of the aisle that think that they deserve FEMA money because they had this disaster or that disaster. That is not the way our country was established.
Right.
Okay. It was up to the surrounding communities to help out, but it was never on the federal government to help out. In fact, the couple times that they did help out,
right,
the American people looked at it and said, "Hey, that's not your money to spend." In fact, there's a very popular or well-known story about Davy Crockett and that particular issue, where Davy Crockett voted to, with the rest of Congress, to provide assistance to a apartment complex that caught on fire. Well, the thing is, that's not your money to spend. Okay? If you all want to donate to it, fine. So be it. Go for it. Absolutely. In fact, I encourage that. But when you're talking about taxpayer money, that is money that is to benefit every citizen of the United States.
Precisely.
Not a particular group of citizens.
Precisely.
Okay. And when you're talking about disaster relief in the forms of going in and rebuilding, disaster loans and that type of stuff, you're not benefiting every person in the United States. So that is actually contrary to general welfare, contrary to the 14th Amendment, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
Most of the relief in Western North Carolina, it's Americans Purse, Cajun Navy, Adam Smith's group. I mean, it's Christian and humanitarian private organizations on the ground that have responded accordingly. And FEMA has been obstructionist. You know, I mean, they try to confiscate private property, all kinds of disaster.
Right.
Yeah, it's
okay, and they pick and choose where they're going to respond and where they don't, depending on who's in power.
That's correct. That's right.
Okay, and that's a very telling thing right there on whether or not something should be authorized or allowed in our federal government. Can a party that's in power have an impact on the party that's out of power? Okay, and if that's the case, then it's absolutely not allowed.
You're asking the right questions for sure. And agreed.
Okay, and that we've seen that with FEMA, we've seen that with SNAP benefits, we've seen that with, I mean, you go down the list. We've seen it with educational benefits, we've seen it with the Inflation Reduction Act, we've seen it with the Infrastructure Act. Okay, where areas that were more supportive to the administration that's in power actually got more benefit out of these programs.
Classic pork.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And that's not the way our government's supposed to be ran.
Agreed.
Okay, and that's why we need to see more people like you in office that are going to actually stand up for the Constitution instead of trying to subvert it.
Well, and we have, as I've repeated, we're on a short clock here.
Oh, we are.
We're closer to the cliff than people want to think. We got to get to work.
Mm-hmm. Okay. I mean, I fully believe because we've gotten so far away from the Constitution that we've actually completely inverted the power structure of this country.
Well, you know, if you stop and think about it, that is true. And as I mentioned earlier, it started in, and I would make the argument, you can make the historical arguments that it really began during the Wilson administration with the notion the world must be made safe for democracy.
Mm-hmm. Right.
When the principal author of the Constitution, James Madison, said democracy is the most vile form of government.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, we could both talk about the founders' quotes on their detesting democracy, but
oh yeah,
we start changing, Article 4, Section 4 of the Constitution gives the states the Republican form of government. We start changing who we are. You change the mind frame, and then the Democrats on the left and the socialists want you to believe that the federal government is supposed to be a lollipop factory. Well, the Constitution never created the lollipop factory to give away lollipops or Obama phones or anything else. And so we have an educational challenge on our hands. I mean, we started. Someone asked me a question about my belief that the unborn have constitutional rights and compared it to intestate succession to show the inconsistency. But we've got to get people thinking. You got to engage the mind, and you guys are doing a great job with that. But it's going to take that in order to bring people back around to understand who we really are. You look at the constitutional republic, and I lecture some on the Constitution, and a lot of Republicans and conservatives are understanding that we're a republic. Some are anyway, but don't know what that means. And I use three separate phrases. One is checks and balances. The Constitution is built with them
mm-hmm.
to restrain, governmental power, which is why you have checks and balances at multiple levels, including the electoral college, including separation of powers, including the Bill of Rights. But the other is rule of law. You got separation of power, rule of law, with the Constitution being the supreme law. With a democracy, two words: mob rule.
Yeah.
Now, you want to see what the democracy looks like? Look at the George Floyd riots, and that is a democracy. That is democracy played out in front of our eyes. So
Mhm.
anyway,
Oh, it absolutely is. Okay. And people don't understand that democracy will always collapse.
sure. John Adams,
And
democracy is
when we are in a democracy, at some point in time, you are going to find yourself in the minority.
yeah.
Okay.
Well,
Democracies are great as long as you're in the majority. But when you're in the minority, democracy is one of the most oppressive forms of government there is.
we would never have had a civil rights movement in democracy, never. And some of those who say we're a democracy fail to understand that. Don't want to understand it. So
Right.
anyway,
Okay. And that's what I'm actually dedicated to restoring the constitutionality of our country. Because without that basis, we'd lose who we are. Okay, and that's one of the problems that I see happening right now, and that's how we've gotten a government that spends money like it's nothing. We've got a government now that believes it can just do whatever it wants, and that's not the way we are supposed to be.
well,
Okay, so
you're correct about that. We've got to continue to educate. We've got to do it boldly.
okay, and this Billy Balls Dip is over here writing a bunch of things. Its powers are limited. Women slaves, indigenous people, half the people of the states. It was concerned with landowning white men. Actually, there's nothing in the Constitution that said anything about land ownership.
Well, people say stuff that's not in the Constitution all the time. It sounds
Okay. The Constitution that dealt with nothing with land ownership. That was actually states that made that as a requirement of voting. And actually, prior to that, there were a lot of states shortly after the Constitution was adopted and ratified that allowed women and blacks to vote. Okay, so where they're trying to get this revisionist history from, I don't know, but if they actually look into it, they will find that early on, a lot of blacks voted, a lot of whites women vote, or actually a lot of women voted, not just white women, but black women too. And it was allowed, it was encouraged, etc. Okay, it was the states that started putting in these criteria for having to have so much land ownership, or having so much property ownership, or that you had to be a white male, or et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. That was not the federal, because the federal government has never set the conditions on who can and cannot vote. The Constitution's never set those conditions.
right. That's correct.
Okay, and that's what people don't understand. That's what people don't get. And that's why they twist the history of the Constitution by trying to disguise it with a statehood history.
Sure.
So I'm going to go ahead and let you go. We've taken up enough of your time. We're over 2 hours as it is. I do appreciate you coming on. Thank you very much.
My pleasure.
Again, I apologize for last week. I did, shortly after we got off here, I found out what the problem was and was able to get it corrected. So,
Well, whatever you did, it's working like a charm tonight. I appreciate the opportunity to chat with you, gentlemen. Hope to do it again. It's been invigorating for me. I love to go into deep discussions, and I think it's fair for the voters to see candidates in situations like this, not 30-second sound bites, which you can't lose
right.
or anything. So, really appreciate the opportunity.
Mm-hmm. And I believe in challenging people, okay, and holding them accountable for their positions.
There you go.
So,
All
okay,
right, bro.
thank you very much. You've already kind of. Why don't you go ahead and let everybody know again how they can find you, how they can follow you, where they can find your books, etc.
All right. So our campaign website is Brown, BROWN, for the word for, Brown, FORNC.com, brown4nc.com. And you can email me directly at don@brown4nc.com. That's don@brown4nc.com. You want to check books? donbrownbooks.com. So don't want to overwhelm people with too many websites, but please write me and we'll have great discussions and look forward to it.
Okay, and we'd love to have you back anytime, Don.
Love to come back. Thank you guys. Appreciate
Okay,
it.
thank you, Don.
Talk to you soon. You bet. Okay, bye-bye.
Take care.
See you later.
Okay, folks, we're going to go ahead and wrap it up for this roundtable. Thank you, everybody in the chat. Thank you for for joining us. We appreciate it, and we will see you again real soon. Thanks, everybody.